She describes herself as an advocate, a servant, and a free spirit. With her 26 plus years in law enforcement in both the Richmond Sheriff's Department and the Richmond Police Department, she knows how our city's justice system works. She's highly decorated and recognized locally and nationally for her work on criminal and juvenile justice initiatives, Black law enforcement consultation, gang reduction, intervention and suppression, women-focused initiatives, peer advisory, and more. Carol is also the founder and CEO of the Carol Adams Foundation, an organization that provides emergency assistance to women and children who are victims of domestic violence. So just to set the stage a little bit, a lot of what we're going to hear today is very heavy. We are excited that someone who cares so passionately about this work is going to tell us more about her work and her impact in the community. Some of the subject matter, some of what you hear might be triggering. Just want to let you guys know that. We are here together to have this experience together. We'll have some community volunteers walking around with tissue boxes if you're so touched. Just like make a signal like I need one. It's okay, we're all here, it's a safe space. We're honored to have Carol here today, fresh from New Orleans, where she just accepted her latest award for her dedication and service to the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement to address this creative community on the topic of justice. So please join me in welcoming Carol Adams to our show.
Anybody? He fired a shot. I don't know if he shot or not. And he just choked me. And I'm afraid for my son and my baby. Please hurry, please. Oh my God! Where are you at?
Victims of domestic violence, they're like a prisoner of war.
Officers have to understand that either you're our knight in shining armor or you're our worst nightmare.
The police are on their way, okay?
The question is when?
Good morning. I wanted to start with this so that you all can understand the dynamics of domestic violence. When I share my story, it's easy to hear my story, but I wanted you to hear the impact of a radio call. I want you to understand what that means. And some of you may have experienced it, and some of you may know someone. But life as a child, growing up in a household of domestic violence, I want people to understand the impact that it has on children. So as a child, you're like a prisoner of war. You're bound and confined in those walls, and you can't just pack up and leave. You can't just say, I want out and I don't want to be here anymore. And so I'm always excited to speak, but I'm always nervous to speak. And those that know me, that I tremble like a leaf on a tree in March. But my story about justice, and I titled it Walk a Mile in My Shoes, and my story with justice. You can go to this. So I say God played a trick on me and he made me become the police because I really didn't care for the police because of my life's story. And you can start the second video. And it all started when I was about 5 years old. My parents moved here from Emporia, where, farming and rural life was the way. And so they moved north to the city to get jobs. And I say life was great for me and my sister while they were away, because living at Granny's house, the sky's the limit. And so when we moved north here to Richmond, things drastically changed for us. We would be awakened in the middle of the night to fighting on the other side of the walls. And I would get up and I would run to a locked door where I could hear my mother screaming on the other side. But never to see her face until the next morning, and to always hear Dad on the other side of the wall saying, go back to bed, everything is okay. And so after living through 12 long years of that, and being this child that always had a smile on her face, nobody ever knew what was going on inside our household. I never got in trouble and I never acted out, so nobody knew what I lived with. And so the day came where it was December the 30th, 1980, where I woke up as this happy-go-lucky teenager, and I had prepared and planned for the rest of my life. And my goal was to join the Air Force, where I took the test. I was a tomboy, so I beat out all the boys because I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so we had spent Christmas with the family in Emporia, and everything was so wonderful. But I was going to leave. My plan was to leave Richmond, Virginia, and to never ever to return, because I didn't like my mother and I didn't like my father. I didn't care for my mother because she would always go back after I would try to help to intervene with the fighting. And I didn't like my dad because of the things that he did to my mother. So that morning, I got up and I went to work at a place called Metropolitan Hospital that's on Grace Street. And they went off to work. And when we came home that night, it was different, because my mom was preparing to go out to a party with her friends. And that was odd, because she wasn't allowed to go out with her friends. And when I saw that, immediately my attention, you can leave it right there, my attention was directed to him. Because by now, he's supposed to be acting out, and he's supposed to be turning the house upside down to make her feel that she don't want to go. But this particular day, he just sat, and he didn't get agitated. He didn't say anything demeaning. So Mom continued, and she got dressed and she went out. And I went up the street to hang out with some friends. And so it's about 10:30 or 11 o'clock when I came home. And as you saw, the house that I drove up to in my police car, that was our house. That was where my mother was murdered. So we lived upstairs in the duplex. And as I walked upstairs, I'm always listening to see what's going on before I get to the door. And this particular night, it's completely silent. There is no TV, no radio, no sound. So in my mind, in my heart, all is well. So as I entered the room that my sister and I shared, which was adjacent to my mom and dad's bedroom, I sat down on the bed and I reached down to take off my shoe. And as I reached down to take off my shoe, in the next room, I heard pow, 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 pow. So immediately, I ran to the phone and I dialed 911, and I told them that my dad had shot my mom. And at that time, the dispatchers asked me all of these crazy questions that I later began to understand when I joined law enforcement. And so she asked what was going on while I was on the phone. And then I said I could not see, but I knew my dad had shot my mom. And so as I go to the door to peek, my mother is laying on the bed and she's not moving, and my dad is still there in the house. And so they keep me on the phone until the first officer arrives, and my dad does not leave. So other officers arrive, and I call family members to come. So there's no haste to take her away. But the officers that were in the room there that were investigating, they brought my dad out and sat him in a chair in the family room. And the things that I witnessed the officers in the room, I will never forget. Some laughed, some joked. I'm sure not at the situation, but that was what was happening inside the room as my mother lay there with 5 gunshot wounds. So the ambulance came a while later, but still no urgency. And then they took her off to the hospital. So we follow along. And we wait, and we wait. And we watch the officers, and a doctor comes out. And he approaches the officers. And the look on their faces. And they have to decide who's gonna come tell us that my mother was there. So they tell us. And by now they've taken him off to jail. So when the dispatcher is asking me, was I sure that my father had shot? I could tell her, yes, I was sure, because he had threatened to kill her so many times in my presence. It was one of his favorite quotes during his drunken rages. Bitch, I'm gonna kill you. And we added a gun to the equation that made it become much more volatile. So from the 1st grade to the 12th grade, we lived with this chaos going on inside our households. So as we get to the justice portion of our story, when it's time for the court proceeding, they've entered into a plea bargain without talking to me, and I'm 17 years old. Whereas they offer him 7 years with 5 years suspended. So altogether, he would serve a total of 18 months. I remember the proceeding where the judge asked him, Mr. Adams, do you have anything to say? And he stood up and he said, Your Honor, I just want to serve my time so I could get back home to my family. Yeah, whoever that was back there. So I had a elevated dislike for the criminal justice system. When the officers came during that time frame of those years, it was always, Mr. Adams, you go, you calm down and cool off, and then you come back home. So my mother didn't have a voice, and we definitely didn't have justice. Not that the jail would have corrected what was done. So I say that God played a trick on me, and he made me become the police. So he sent me there to teach the police how to treat people on the other side of the table. He sent me there to teach me what's supposed to happen and to be a voice and to be an advocate for everyone that needs that help. He sent me to wear that uniform so that I could go places where other people cannot go, so that I can help people navigate. And when I tell my story, I always, when I'm teaching police officers, I remind them that I came to work with the same police officers that were standing in my mother's bedroom that day. And those officers don't remember me, but I remember them. I remember them. And I do not know the name of the investigating officer. So that was the amount of contact that I had with that investigator, even though we went to court. So there was no interaction or no contact at all. So sometimes it takes a lot for me to wear my blue uniform, especially when I see that there's an injustice. But I wear it proudly, and I make no bones about it, that I took an oath to protect the citizens and not the police. And that's what true justice is. And so So I, just like you, was created with a mission to be completed by the conclusion of my earthly existence. And I live each day with the understanding that every breath and every second is to be used to the fullest as I fulfill my life's assignment. Living with the purpose and knowing the order of this earthly existence, God's will takes first priority, and suffrage is a must to build character, clarity, and trust in your relationship with it. So I'm honored always to stand before any group of people. However, for the life of me, I don't feel as if I do anything extraordinary or special. We all have something to do. We all have something to do. And I was taught to treat people as I'd like to be treated, and it's okay if my actions aren't reciprocated. Because although Mr. Adams shot my mother 5 times, Mr. Adams was at one time shot 4 times, and I had to care for his wounds. I had to patch and care for his wounds. And he passed away from lung cancer in 2000, and I had to be seated next to his bed. I had to go to the hospital. I had to read him the Bible. I had to afford him the opportunity to make things right between him and the good Lord. I never asked him for an apology. I never asked him for an explanation because he didn't owe it to me. It's okay. I'm from the country. I'm from the country. Okay, we'll just swat it. And so when I say that, so that people can understand that forgiveness is for you. It is not for the other person. And that we all are only responsible for our own actions. And I share that to say that my heart aches for a mother that I've missed for 39 years. But it also aches for a father that I've never known. Because Mr. Adams' issue was that he did not believe that I was his child. And I have one sister, just a baby. Their baby, I called her, because I was always treated different. But that is what gives me my drive. And I have to let people know, and especially him, is that the father of all is my father. It's my parents. And that's truly been exemplified because I've existed 39 years without any parents and completely been taken care of because of my trust and my beliefs. Now, see, the hand I was dealt took me on a horrifying roller coaster ride, but it did not leave me mentally or physically crippled. My life came with an assignment, and I spent my days trying to live up to the expectations of the Lord, my mother, and my grandmother. Most people feel sorry for me when they hear my life story, but it's okay, because no journey is without suffrage. That's what builds your character and shapes your faith if you're a believer. And as I reflect back these 39 years, it's truly less about me and more about those who've stepped up to support me and to be there for me in preparation for this work that's to be done. You want to go to that? In this picture, it's me and my mother and my sister. And that's my mother, Oreen Adams. She was 33 years old when she departed from this world. And the irony is, my sister and I both landed in law enforcement, and together we probably served about 60 years together. And from this, you know, as a police officer responding to those calls and meeting families just like mine, I'm really a quiet and a shy person, and I'm always take the corner, which I find it. But the Carol Adams Foundation was created because I saw that there was a need, some gaps to be filled. Because if you're suffering in any way, shape, or form and you need care, it is ridiculous that we have to go through all of this red tape to get an approval to help someone. and for paperwork to lay on someone's desk when somebody's life is at risk. And when people need help, they need help. And one day on the call, I just had an upchuck. It's like, okay, ma'am, I need you to understand, you know, and I'm telling her my story in my uniform, and she's looking at me, and I said, 2 things I want you to understand. It does not matter how much money I have, what color I am, or what my job is. Life happens to everyone. So stop looking at people as if they're giants and life doesn't happen to them, because life happens to us all. And I'm not telling you something about what I was taught in the police department. I'm telling you what I've experienced throughout my life. And as I did that over and over again to try to get the attention of individuals, and I want to go back to the mission of the, no, stay right there. The mission of the Carol Adams Foundation is to help women, men, and children impacted by domestic violence, because this thing called domestic violence is rampant and it impacts everyone because it is a family crime. And we need to understand that we all have feelings and we all need to be loved. And you know, when this we try to suppress it, and we must stop suppressing it. We have to talk about it. And so over the years of spending my own money when different organizations didn't have what they said they had on their pretty little brochures, I just started spending my own money, and we created the Carol Adams Foundation. And the foundation is there to be able to help. And all of the services we provide are at no charge. And when I tell you that this family dad that I got sends me everything that I need to be able to help people, it comes. And so we provide a variety of services, lots of children's services, because I want children to have a safe haven to go to. I didn't talk about it, but I was a runaway. Every chance I got, I left my house. You know, I had a bar in Churchill where if I went in, the keeper there would say that's her booth, nobody else can be there, because he knew at 11 or 12 o'clock at night that I needed a safe haven to be in. So now we have a resource center. This is one of our transitional homes where we can help put families up when they're in need. Counseling services. We have summer camp going on now, 10 weeks of summer camp for 25 to 35 inner city kids who've been impacted by violence, by trauma, to be able to have a safe place to be all summer long and to be able to participate in a variety of activities. And so we can go to the next one. Oh, that's our building, that's our resource center. You can go to the next one. And that's one of our houses also, where we've had a young lady that lived there for 4 years, and she just moved out, got her own house, and so we've helped her sustain her lifestyle and to regroup and to provide a nice place for her and her girls to move. And you can go to the next one. Okay, and so here, I just want to say that in 1981, I could have never imagined the journey that I would have been catapulted into. And it would seem as if December the 13th, 1980 would have been, you know, I would be just crippled mentally and not have the desire to want to go out and to do things. But God has catapulted me where, you know, I try to teach hope. I want everyone to know that just keep doing, because you don't know what the next steps are. And who would have thought this little girl from 1327 West Clay Street down the block would end up on a platform at the White House telling this story. And I had no idea when I got there that I would be telling this story. But to be able to participate in policy and making law and guidelines around children's crimes, women's crimes, men's crimes, and to educate people about this, because this is not a simple thing, you all. This is really, really significant. And have a voice. Use your voice. We all have some work to do. And so I want to end with a quote from Martin Luther King, which is on the plaque that my mother was holding there. And it is injustice anywhere is the threat to justice everywhere. And we are caught in this unescapable network. I can't even read my little bit of writing, but y'all know, and injustice anywhere is a threat to everywhere. I've scribbled on it. And that's what we must understand, that we have to stand and we have to fight every day for what's right. And I love the rules that you all made in your groups. It's treat people like you want to be treated, and everyone deserves a voice. And we're all human beings. God gave us all the same parts and all the same makeup, and we can't live in this world with hatred. We gotta have love, we gotta have caring, we gotta have compassion, and we gotta venture to the other sides, to places that we haven't been before. And when you get there, you'll see everybody there is just like you. Just like you. Thank you.